Now, there are many amazing Zelda games out there. If you look at sales, then Breath of the Wild and Twilight Princess are king, but everyone has a different favorite title in the series, even if some people don't like it at all. And one great example of this is The Wind Waker, a game that was absolutely hated by most fans when it first came out, because it wasn't exactly what people expected or wanted. I even covered this in an older video, so I won't talk too much about it. Instead, we will look at something else. The sequel that we never got. What happened to it? Why was it cancelled? And are there any leftovers from it in other Zelda titles? Well, let's have a look. But first, introducing my new store, Wily.gg, the place to buy your new games and get your hands on eShop cards for Nintendo as well as Xbox. And don't forget, use code Wily at checkout to save 10%. Now let's continue. Now, The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker was an action-adventure game developed and published by Nintendo for the GameCube console. It is set on a group of islands in a vast sea and follows the story of a young boy named Link as he embarks on a quest to save his sister and defeat the evil Ganondorf. Now, another thing that makes it quite unique, aside from the setting, is its cel-shaded graphics, which gave the game a unique visual style. And this was a problem for many. The game's cel-shaded graphics were a departure from the more realistic graphics of previous Zelda games. And most didn't expect Nintendo to go into this direction, but that wasn't all. The game was released during a time when the gaming market was becoming increasingly saturated with open-world games, and some players may have been drawn to those types of games instead of The Legend of Zelda. And last but not least, The Wind Waker was also released late into the life cycle of the GameCube, which may have limited its overall sales potential. Now sure, later on it got the love that it deserves, but it took a good while. In the beginning, the game had sold relatively poorly in Japan, owing to the fact that the country's video game market had also begun to decline. Additionally, despite a successful pre-order campaign, sales in the West were also slowing faster than usual. So really, there were red flags everywhere for a company like Nintendo, and so they decided to change course. But before they did this, they started development on a second Wind Waker game. It was named The Wind Waker 2, and the game would use the same cel-shaded visual style as The Wind Waker, but it would take place on land instead, with Link riding on horseback just like we saw in Ocarina of Time. Now, during the initial stages of planning, the development team would discover that Toon Link's proportions didn't lend themselves well to horseback riding. And while an adult version of Toon Link had already been contemplated for the original Wind Waker, the team felt this wasn't the solution they were looking for. Now at the time, series producer Eiji Aonuma had become aware of the demand for a more realistic Zelda game from the series' North American audience. And so the project went on to become The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. It would ultimately be a very different game visually, but art director Satoru Takizawa, I think, has stated that the character profile for Midna was inherited from a goblin/devilkin character that was to be featured in a secret project that the Zelda team was working on prior to Twilight Princess. And most people assumed that he was referring to the Wind Waker 2 project in this statement. So, are there any leftovers of this game in the files of Twilight Princess or somewhere else? Well, yes. So let's have a look at them. First up, Midna. There are multiple different designs for her when you look at the concept art, and you can clearly see that these were made during the Wind Waker 2 era. And that's mostly because she looks a lot like the enemy known as the Mini-Blin from the Wind Waker. These are small little goblin-like creatures that use small tridents or pitchforks as weapons, which they use to stab their opponent with. These creatures make a characteristic and sound, which can alert Link of their presence, and if Link is attacked by one, it laughs at him. So these are evil little buggers, and it looks like Nintendo used these enemies as some sort of base for creating the early version of Midna. And clearly they came up with many different designs. Some have a more primal look, while one of them has an incredibly colorful design, almost as if it was actually made for Super Mario Sunshine. Now it's clear that they were going for an imp-like design, which they also used in Twilight Princess. But it could be that because they were working on an imp, this actually influenced the story of Twilight Princess, where Midna was turned into this imp-like creature by Zant. Now personally, I have no idea what kind of role this version of Midna would have in the Wind Waker sequel, but it must have been similar to what we saw in Twilight Princess or other Zelda games when it comes to the companions. However, is this the only leftover from the Wind Waker sequel? Well, no. If you dive into the files of Twilight Princess, you can actually find more. Some of these are small though, like this moon that was used in the first Twilight Princess trailer, which debuted at E3 in May 2004, and it's actually recycled from the Wind Waker. Or the fact that during development, Tetra was used as a placeholder until Midna's design was finalized. They used this dark and evil looking Midna. And personally, I have no idea why they did this, but it looks interesting at least. And it's also very similar to the Dark Link that's seen in that one cutscene in Twilight Princess. Now aside from these, there are many more small things in the files like the classic bomb flowers and even the Wind Waker. However, all of this isn't too exciting, but I did find one last thing that was most likely made for the Wind Waker sequel that had a huge impact on Twilight Princess. And I'm talking about this, an unused fish model in the style of the Wind Waker. What? You think this little fish isn't important at all? Well, you are wrong, because it influenced one of the biggest side activities in the game, fishing. This unused model appears to be an early version of the Hylian Loach, as it shares an archive and model file name with the Loach that exists in the fishing game archive. However, as you can see, its style is more reminiscent of the Wind Waker than Twilight Princess. And that's because the whole concept of adding fishing to the game was most likely an idea that they were working on since the very beginning. In early screenshots, you can see that the forest area of Twilight Princess would have been a lot bigger, and there would have been a whole pond and river network, and Link could use a canoe to get on these waters and fish. Now in the end, Nintendo cut back on this and just created specific areas where you could fish, and you could also throw your rod in any body of water you came across, of course. Now I bet this whole idea was originally meant for the Wind Waker sequel, and was later used for Twilight Princess. This is why the cel-shaded fish is still in the files. It's a leftover of the old fishing system that was gonna be seen in the Wind Waker 2. And who knows how it would have worked. Personally, I don't think it would have been very different from the early ideas seen in Twilight Princess's screenshots. Now aside from this, I couldn't find any leftovers. The only thing that is left is this mural on Ganondorf's armor in Twilight Princess HD, which Nintendo either put in for fun, or because it was an actual leftover from the Wind Waker 2. It does depict Link fighting the Helmarok King after all. However, I don't have any other information on it. Sadly enough, Nintendo didn't leak a lot, and we never even saw the adult version of Cartoon Link or something like that, which is certainly the holy grail of this cut game. But no, Nintendo was smart enough to keep it all a secret. Now let me know in the comment section down below whether you would have wanted the Wind Waker sequel over Twilight Princess or vice versa. And don't forget, I have more videos covering stuff like this, so be sure to check them out. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to subscribe, click the bell button, do all the good stuff, help out your boy. If you have any video ideas, leave them down below. I do read the comments. Yes, I certainly do. Certainly the first week that they're up. And, yeah. Have a good one. Thank you for watching. Many kisses. Bye-bye. Papa is gonna leave now. Bye!